The Civil War was a time of incredible conflict, but beyond the famous battles and generals lie stories so wild you won't believe they're real. Spies, secret weapons, and even ghostly encounters shaped history in ways you never learned in school. Stick around because these 20 hidden stories from the Civil War will blow your mind. Number 20. Harriet Tubman, the Civil War spy. You know Harriet Tubman as the hero of the Underground Railroad, but did you know she was also a badass Union spy? Tubman went behind enemy lines, led scouting missions, and even commanded an armed raid that freed over 700 enslaved people. The 1863 Combahee River Raid was one of the most daring missions of the war, proving that Tubman wasn't just a freedom fighter. She was an unstoppable military strategist. Number 19. The mystery of the vanishing Confederate gold. As the Confederacy fell apart, rumors swirled about a massive fortune in Confederate gold disappearing without a trace. Some say it was hidden in Georgia. Others believe it was buried deep in the Appalachian Mountains, while some think it was stolen. To this day, treasure hunters are still searching for the missing fortune. Could it still be out there, waiting to be found? Number 18. The Union's secret weapon, hot air balloons. The Civil War had its own version of aerial warfare, hot air balloons. The Union Balloon Corps used these floating observation decks to spy on enemy troop movements in real time. They even had telegraph lines running down to officers on the ground. Confederate soldiers, unprepared for this high-tech advantage, were terrified, sometimes believing the balloons were supernatural omens. Number 17. The Confederate submarine that disappeared. The H.L. Hunley made history in 1864 as the first submarine to sink an enemy warship. But right after completing its mission, it mysteriously vanished. The wreck was found 131 years later at the bottom of the ocean. But the biggest mystery remains: what caused it to sink? Some say it was its own torpedo. Others believe the crew ran out of oxygen. Either way, the Hunley's fate is still one of the war's strangest stories. Number 16. Lincoln's chilling dream about his own death. Just days before he was assassinated, Abraham Lincoln had a terrifying dream. He was walking through the White House when he saw a casket surrounded by mourners. When he asked who had died, a soldier replied, "The President." Was it just a coincidence, or did Lincoln have an eerie sense of the danger closing in on him? Number 15. The woman who fought as a man. Imagine risking everything to fight in a war that didn't allow you to enlist. Sarah Edmonds did exactly that, disguising herself as a man named Franklin Thompson to serve in the Union Army. She fought in battles, worked as a field nurse, and even became a spy behind enemy lines. For years, she kept her secret, proving that bravery knows no gender. Even after revealing her true identity, she was granted a military pension, something almost no other women received at the time. Number 14. The New York City draft riots. When chaos took over. In 1863, New York City exploded into violence over a new draft law. Wealthy men could pay $300 to avoid service, while the poor, especially immigrants, were forced to fight. The result? 4 days of rioting, looting, and deadly attacks, with over 100 people killed before troops restored order. It was one of the deadliest civil uprisings in U.S. history, proving that the war's battles weren't only fought on distant battlefields. Number 13. The Confederate general who refused to surrender. Most Confederate leaders admitted defeat in April 1865, but not General Stand Watie. As the leader of the Confederate Cherokee forces, Watie kept fighting for months, launching raids and ambushes long after the war had ended. It wasn't until June 23, 1865, that he finally surrendered, becoming the last Confederate general to do so. His refusal to give up made him a legend, but also highlighted just how deep the divisions of the war ran. Number 12. The secret codes. Hidden in Southern dresses, Civil War spies didn't just work in the shadows. They walked the streets, hidden in plain sight. Southern women played a critical role in espionage, sewing coded messages into their dresses, smuggling weapons under their skirts, and even passing secret maps through the hems of their clothing. Rose O'Neal Greenhow, one of the most famous Confederate spies, even charmed a Union officer into unknowingly helping her smuggle intelligence. Who said war was only fought with guns? Number 11. The mysterious death of Stonewall Jackson. Confederate General Thomas Stonewall Jackson was feared for his battlefield tactics, but his own men accidentally shot him. During the chaotic Battle of Chancellorsville, Confederate troops mistook Jackson for an enemy and opened fire. He lost his left arm but seemed to be recovering until he suddenly died from pneumonia days later. Was it a medical mistake? An unknown infection? Either way, his shocking death may have changed the course of the war. Number 10. When the Civil War reached Canada. Think the Civil War stayed within U.S. borders. Think again. In 1864, Confederate agents launched a raid on St. Albans, Vermont, storming into town from their hideout in Canada. They robbed 3 banks, set buildings on fire, and then escaped back across the border. When the U.S. demanded their return, Canada refused, creating a major diplomatic crisis. This little-known attack remains one of the northernmost incidents of the Civil War. Number 9. The Ghosts of Gettysburg. Gettysburg was one of the bloodiest battles of the war, and many believe the spirits of fallen soldiers never left. Visitors and park rangers have reported eerie phantom gunfire, shadowy figures in uniform, and even ghost soldiers who vanish into thin air. One of the most chilling sightings is at Devil's Den, where people claim to see a barefoot soldier giving directions, only for him to disappear moments later. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, Gettysburg remains one of the most haunted places in America. Number 8. The Exploding Coal Torpedo. Civil War Sabotage. The Civil War wasn't just fought with muskets and cannons, it was also fought with sabotage. Confederate saboteurs created coal torpedoes, small bombs disguised as lumps of coal. When Union ships or trains unknowingly used them as fuel, the coal exploded, causing catastrophic damage. One of these deadly devices is even believed to have sunk the USS Cairo. This early form of disguised warfare was as clever as it was devastating. Number 7. The Kid Soldiers of the Civil War. Believe it or not, kids as young as 10 years old fought in the Civil War. Thousands of underage boys joined the fight as drummers, buglers, and even soldiers. One of the most famous was John Clem, a 12-year-old who reportedly shot a Confederate officer who tried to capture him. He went on to become the youngest non-commissioned officer in U.S. Army history. The Civil War didn't just change the fate of nations, it threw children into battle. Number 6. The Black Regiment that proved everyone wrong. In 1863, the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment made history as one of the first all-black Union units. Despite being doubted by many, they led a fearless charge on Fort Wagner in South Carolina, proving that black soldiers were just as brave and capable as their white counterparts. Their heroic stand was later immortalized in the film Glory, but their real-life courage changed history long before Hollywood told their story. Number 5. The Union general who became a Native American chief. After the war, General Ely S. Parker didn't just fade into history, he made it. A Seneca Native American, Parker was Ulysses S. Grant's military secretary and actually wrote the final terms of surrender that Robert E. Lee signed at Appomattox. Later, he became the first Native American to serve as Commissioner of Indian Affairs, fighting for the rights of indigenous people. His legacy remains one of the most overlooked stories of the Civil War. Number 4. The Confederate town that refused to surrender. Even after the Civil War officially ended in 1865, one small Texas town refused to accept defeat. Brazos Island continued to fly the Confederate flag and even engaged in small battles, refusing to acknowledge the South had lost. It wasn't until Union troops arrived and forced them to stand down that they finally gave up. This bizarre act of defiance remains a strange historical footnote. Number 3. The secret Confederate prison in the North. Most people assume Confederate prisons were all in the South, but one of the worst Civil War prisons was actually in Chicago. Camp Douglas held thousands of captured Confederate soldiers, but conditions were brutal. Disease, starvation, and inhumane treatment led to thousands of deaths, earning it the nickname the Andersonville of the North. Proof that prison horrors weren't just a Southern problem. Number 2. The first Medal of Honor ever went to a spy. The very first Medal of Honor in U.S. history wasn't awarded for a massive battle. It was given to a Union spy. In 1863, Jacob Parrott took part in the daring Great Locomotive Chase, where Union soldiers stole a Confederate train and sabotaged rail lines. Parrott was captured, tortured, and refused to betray his mission. earning him the first ever Medal of Honor. His bravery set the standard for generations of heroes to come. Number 1. The assassination that almost wiped out the U.S. government. Everyone knows John Wilkes Booth assassinated Lincoln, but few realize he was part of a larger conspiracy to kill the Vice President and Secretary of State on the same night. The plan was meant to cripple the entire U.S. government. While Booth succeeded in killing Lincoln, the other attacks failed, though Secretary of State William Seward was brutally stabbed. If Booth's full plan had worked, the U.S. could have been thrown into total chaos at its most fragile moment. And that's a wrap on 20 little-known Civil War stories. From spies and sabotage to ghostly encounters and missing treasure, history is always more complex than it seems. If you love this, make sure to subscribe for even more mind-blowing stories from the past.